Hey friends, how's it going? My name is Gabby, welcome back to my channel, and today I have a very exciting video planned because if you didn't know, I've actually been doing YouTube full-time for about 6 months now. In December of last year is when I left my job, and I've just been doing my own thing, working for myself, and doing YouTube full-time for about half a year now, which is so crazy. It went by so fast, but I thought it would be kind of fun to do almost like a Q&A video just talking about how it's been going so far and what does my daily routine look like now that I'm doing YouTube full-time and different things like that. I actually asked for a bunch of questions over on my Instagram, and you guys sent in some really good questions, so I'm very excited to answer all of those in this video. But before we do jump into the video, I just wanted to say a huge thank you to Skillshare for sponsoring today's video. It's because of sponsors like Skillshare that I'm able to do YouTube full-time, so that is why I think they are the perfect sponsor for today's video. Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of inspiring classes for anyone who loves learning and wants to explore their creativity and learn new skills. It's important to invest in yourself and your personal growth. I think Skillshare is the perfect place whether you're trying to learn a new skill that you don't know at all how to do, like starting from ground zero, or if you're just trying to hone in on a skill that you already have and become more of a master at what you're already good at doing. Skillshare is a really great resource for freelancers and entrepreneurs who are trying to grow their side hustles, or even for people who are trying to go into a new career. It's great because all of their classes are ad-free so that you can stay in the zone and focus on what you're learning. And there are new premium classes getting launched every single week so that there's always something new to learn and discover. I recently just started taking this class called Romanticizing Your Life, a beginner's guide to creating vlogs for YouTube by Carrie Cakes. And I think this class is very interesting because, as someone who vlogs as often as I do, it's really interesting to hear advice, from other creators and other people who are doing what I'm doing and getting tips from them and learning from them. I think no matter how long you've been doing something, there's always something you can learn from someone else who's doing what you're doing. And I really love, the overall message in this class about how every person has a different life, and so every vlog is going to feel different. And it might feel like, YouTube is oversaturated with vlogs and you might be wondering, what can I contribute that would be different? But your life is different and nobody is like you, and so your vlog is going to be different from others and you're going to contribute something new. But of course, if that class does not interest you, they do have so many other topics and creative things like writing, illustration, design, marketing, logo design, graphic design. If you can think of it, it's probably there. So yeah, definitely be sure to use that link down below. The first 1,000 people to use the link are going to get a 1-month free trial of Skillshare's membership so that you can explore your creativity. And thank you so much once again to Skillshare for sponsoring today's video. And now let's get into the questions. Okay, sorry, I had to move down to the floor. I was trying to do something different by being like up there, but it didn't work for me, so now I'm on the floor. Yeah, I'm excited to answer these questions about doing YouTube full-time. I feel like these last 6 months have flown by so freaking fast, and to be honest, it's been a very chaotic 6 months, so I feel like I even still haven't fully had time to process all of the changes and things that have happened in my life, because as I mentioned earlier, December is the month that I quit my job. December 10th is the day that I quit my job, and then during the month of December, I didn't really have time to process that because I was working on like all of my end of the year content and putting out all of the end of the year videos. And then as soon as it hit January, it was Winterween. I was daily vlogging Winterween, and then it was my birthday, my sister's birthday, I was getting the vaccine. And then in February, I also had some life changes going on that were more personal. And then in March, we decided that we wanted to move back into my parents' house. So March and April were very much focused on moving, and then we moved in the month of April. And then during May, I kind of had, jury duty like lingering over my head all month because I had to do jury duty, and there were just a lot of things that were kind of taking up all of my attention. And I feel like only now that we're like settling into June and going into June, I feel like this is the first month that I don't have any huge life distractions happening, that I can actually focus on the fact that like, wow, I'm doing YouTube full time now and this is my life. So it's taken quite a bit to get here, but I'm so grateful. Like I just want to emphasize, like every time I make a video talking about this or doing this, like there is not a moment of my life that I take this shit for granted. Okay, like I really appreciate anybody who watches my videos and anybody who's given me the privilege to be able to do this. There is not a single moment that I take this for granted, and I just want you to know that up front because I appreciate you so much. One of the questions that I got that I wanted to address right off the bat is why was the reason that I moved back in with my parents. And even though I did touch on this in one of my monthly vlogs when I was talking about moving, I thought I would bring it up here again because the reason why I ended up moving back in with my parents actually had nothing to do with YouTube. And I know I've emphasized that time and time again, but it's easy for people people to think like, oh, you quit your job full time and now you're living back with your parents, so it must not be going well. But honestly, like there's been so much happening in my personal life that I'm choosing not to share that also played a part in why I'm moving back in with my parents. But it was also a very straightforward decision, like why we ended up moving back here, because, you know, like I said, our apartment was trying to put us down for another year-long lease and we didn't really want to stay for another year. They were increasing our rent, which, you know, kind of sucked because we could afford the increased rent. Like it wasn't too bad of an increase, but it was just like we didn't want to be paying more to live where we were. And there were so many downsides of living in that apartment. You know, we had 3 people living in that 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom apartment, and it was small, you know, like the whole apartment was only like 700 square feet. Like it was a small apartment. And it was just time, you know, like we had been living at that apartment for almost 3 years, and it was just time for a change, something different. And because we can't exactly afford a house right now with like the way the house market is just insane right now in Washington and pretty much everywhere, we just decided that it would be a good idea for us to, you know, move back in with my parents for a few months, save some money, and then buy a house either later this year or early next year. And so that is the only reason really why we decided to move back into my parents' house. It literally has nothing to do with YouTube or whether YouTube's going well for me. Like that had nothing to do with that decision. One of the other questions that I got most frequently was, you know, questions about like, is the income stable enough, or do you make as much as you did at your previous job? And I don't want to get into specifics with like numbers or anything, but I will let you know that I am currently making more through YouTube than I made at my previous job, and I don't think I would have felt comfortable leaving my previous job if that wasn't the case. And not only that, but I made the decision when YouTube was consistently steady income for me for over 2 years, because it was actually, you know, in the year of 2020 when I started to, you know, get my first sponsorships and start making some serious money on YouTube. And 2020 was a really financially stable year for me on YouTube, and then 2021 continued to be a really financially stable year for me on YouTube. And so it wasn't until after those 2 years of pretty much some consistent steady income from YouTube that I decided to quit my job and do this full time. I did get a couple questions too asking like what I did as a job before this, and if I kind of miss having coworkers or if it ever gets kind of lonely, you know, like working for myself. And to answer your questions, before I did YouTube full time, I was a restaurant manager. Like I was the general manager of a restaurant for a few years, and then in 2021 I stepped down from general manager to assistant manager so that I could have more time for YouTube, and I went down to working about 20 hours instead of my usual like 40 or 45 hours. Yeah, to answer your question, it was really hard to leave my job, you know, not just because of the, you know, financial security of like having a job, but also because I'm really close with my coworkers at that job. And so like, yeah, it was not easy at all for me to leave that job. A lot of those people, you know, in the restaurant really feel like family to me, especially like the owners as well. You know, it's a pretty small company, so over the years I've just gotten really close with like the owners and a lot of the managers there and all of the people there, and they're all incredibly supportive of me, which just makes my heart freaking sore. Like they're all really genuinely some of the best people that I've met in my life, and so it was not an easy decision to leave the restaurant, but it was also a decision that improved my mental health a lot because, you know, I feel like anybody that's ever worked in a restaurant can tell you how stressful and demanding of a job it is to work in a restaurant. And I do think the people who work in restaurants or fast food or any kind of food or retail jobs are some of the most overworked and underpaid people in this country, because these jobs are hard, okay? Like they are not easy jobs to be standing on your feet all day, dealing with customers, hustling on your ass all day to get food out to people. It's a stressful time, you know? And so I think, you know, working in a restaurant during the pandemic just really elevated the stress like through the roof, not only because, you know, now you're not only dealing with the regular stress of a restaurant job, but you're also dealing with the stress of, you know, having to ask people to wear masks and dealing with confrontational customers who don't want to follow the rules and enforcing social distancing in the restaurant. And like, it just really elevated things to an extreme, and it just got really stressful. Like really, it was a really hard time. Like I'm not gonna lie, it was taking a very big toll on my mental health to be working in a restaurant. And so it was definitely the best decision for me to leave. I don't regret leaving the restaurant, even though I know that it was very hard for me to do that, and it still is hard, but it's like, it's not like I don't have those relationships with my friends still, you know? I did get a couple questions asking like, how has doing YouTube like affected your social life? Like instead of having, you know, like going to work every day and seeing my coworkers, like how has it affected my social life? And I think honestly, like now that I'm living here with my parents, it's actually helped my social life improve a little bit, you know, because I feel like it could get very lonely when I was at the apartment, you know, and Rachel and Obed would go and work and I would just be home alone all day with Tank, and it would just be kind of lonely, and it could drive me kind of stir crazy, especially because I was home alone a lot during those winter months like January and February, where a lot of times we were just like kind of snowed in and couldn't really do anything. And so it could feel a little stir crazy at times, you know, but it's actually improved a lot since I've moved back home with my parents, because now, you know, both of my parents are retired. They're always home. And now it's like there's always somebody else here if I need to, like, you know, see somebody else or hang out with somebody else. Like, my parents are always here. So that's kind of nice, you know. And to be honest, my social life has kind of improved since I've moved back home with my parents, because I do have a lot of friends here that live in this town that I didn't live very close to before, you know? So the restaurant that I used to work at is in the same town that my parents live in. So in a way, it's kind of nice because now I get to be closer to a lot of my friends that worked at this restaurant, and it just kind of worked out, you know? I did get a question that was like, how long did it take for you to become financially stable from YouTube? And, you know, as I said, it wasn't until the year 2020 where I started to see some financial stability from YouTube. But at that point, I had already been on YouTube for 5 years. So it's definitely not something that happens overnight. You know, like, I started my YouTube channel in early 2015, and it wasn't until like about mid 2020 where I started to see some real financial stability from YouTube. But again, it's not something that happens overnight. I mean, I know maybe it does for some people, but for me, it definitely took a lot of time and a lot of work to get there. I had a few questions too about, like, do I regret dropping out of college, or would I ever go back to college, or something of that nature? Because if you didn't know, in the year of 2018, I had gotten my associate's degree from community college, and then I did 1 quarter at a university in my 3rd year before I decided to drop out and not go back in the fall. The main reason why I didn't end up going back at the time was because I was getting promoted at my restaurant. Like, at the time, I was just a shift leader, and then they wanted to promote me to assistant manager and then general manager of the restaurant within a few months at that time. And so I just decided to put all of my energy and time into working instead of my degree. And to be honest, I don't regret leaving school. I don't regret my decision, and I don't know if I would go back, you know, because as much as I would love to, like, if money wasn't an issue, like, say if I could just go to school for free, I would definitely do that, because I love learning and I love getting an education, and I think getting an education is super important, and I love English so much. Like, I would have gone for an English degree, I would have gone for a creative writing degree. Like, that is something that I would love to do. But honestly, because of the whole money thing, like, it's so expensive to go to school, like, literally so expensive. And it's like, realistically, what would I be doing with a degree anyways? I'd probably be wanting to do what I'm already doing right now. And so it's like, I don't think I need a degree to do what I want to do in my life. So for those reasons, I don't think I would go back to school at this point. Even though that's, like, sad to say, but I'm not writing it off, like, forever. I'm definitely open to the idea of going to school, like, later in life, you know? Like, I don't know what the future holds. I don't think about it very often. And then just to follow up off of that last question, I did get a lot of questions that were like, do you see yourself doing this for a long time, or are you going to be doing YouTube for the rest of your life, or things like that? And to answer those questions, I have absolutely no idea. Like, thinking about the future, you know, as I said, is something that's scary for me, especially because as somebody who's doing YouTube full time now, you know, there's not a lot of research on what a future looks like for somebody who's doing YouTube full time, you know, because YouTube has only been around so long, and there's only so many people that have been able to do YouTube full time, that it's like, what does the future look like for somebody that's doing YouTube full time? I don't know, you know, like, what does retirement look like? Is retirement even an option? Like, what does that whole thing look like? Like, I have absolutely no idea. I'm literally just taking this one day at a time. I don't know if I'm going to be doing this forever. You know, part of my, like, something that I would love to do is just to be able to do YouTube in the future and then have something else on the side that I do, whether that's like working in a bookstore or working in a library or having like a cute little side job that I find real joy in. I've actually been considering even, you know, this summer, like maybe getting a job part-time at a bookstore, because there's some really cute local bookstores in this town, and like maybe I'm just romanticizing it, but I love the idea of working in a bookstore, and it's kind of always been like one of those bucket list things for me. Like, I would always love to work in a bookstore one day, and so I'm thinking like maybe this summer, or, you know, maybe next year, like I'll just apply for a part-time job at a bookstore. And it's like, it's not even like I need the money financially. It's just like, it's that stability thing, you know, like I like the idea of having something that's more stable than YouTube. Not that YouTube's like not stable for me, because it is right now, you know, but again, it's like one of those things where if you think about the future, it's just scary because YouTube is so inconsistent at times. I did get a few questions on like what is one of the most stressful things about YouTube, and I feel like one of the most stressful things for me personally is not knowing you know, how much your AdSense from YouTube is going to fluctuate month to month, you know, because if you didn't know, with YouTube, you get paid off of ad revenue from ads that are on your videos, you know, like that's how that works. And so it's scary because some months are just slower than other months, you know, and I feel like the ad revenue is the most inconsistent thing about YouTube. I feel like the things that are a lot more consistent is usually like Patreon. If you have Patreon, is pretty consistent. And then also sponsorships. I've been lucky enough that my sponsorships have been pretty consistent. And those are things that I rely on for income. But YouTube ad revenue is just so hit or miss month to month, you know, and that's the thing that is really stressful, is that some months you can have very high ad revenue and earn a lot in one month, and then the next month it can be a total dip. And it really just depends on a lot of things, you know. It depends on how many videos you uploaded that month, it depends on how many views those videos are getting, and then also just depends on like the amount of traffic coming to your channel. There's just a lot of factors that go into it. And you know, from what I've noticed, it seems like for most creators, the beginning of the year is very slow with AdSense, you know, like there's not a lot of people watching YouTube in like the first 3 months of the year, but then you start to see a spike in the summertime, you know, like summer between like May and September. That is when numbers are usually very high, and then we see another dip in the fall until around December, and then December is like the highest time of the year because everybody's doing like Vlogmas and like end of the year stuff, and everybody's watching YouTube in December apparently. And so usually it's like consistently you do the best in December and in the summertime. You have to keep in the back of your mind, like it's crazy how much YouTube fluctuates with like how well you can be doing in some months, and then the next month it's like not that great. And it really just depends on what you're creating and if people are wanting to watch that, you know. So yeah, it is a little bit stressful. I feel like I get the most stressed out when I think a video is gonna do well and then it doesn't do well, but then I feel like I also have the same surprises when I don't think a video is gonna do very well and then it ends up doing really well. Like that one video I did, I think in February or March, I did a video that was called Books I Thought I Would Hate or something like that. I literally thought that video was gonna flop. I was like, do I even really want to post this? Like, I don't think this video is gonna get any views. And then it's one of my most viewed videos in the last 3 months. So like, sometimes YouTube can be very unpredictable in that way, but for the most part, I've gotten to know my audience and numbers well enough that I can most of the time accurately predict how well a video is gonna do. So that's pretty good. One of the other biggest questions that I got was like, what does your schedule look like now that you do YouTube full time? Or what is your routine? Or do I have a routine down? And the answer to that would be no. I'm embarrassed to say that I still don't really have a routine down, especially with my sleep schedule. Like my sleep schedule is still all over the place. I go to bed anywhere between like 1 a.m. and 3 a.m. and then I wake up usually between 9 a.m. and 10:30 a.m. at the latest. So that's kind of how my sleep schedule is working right now. I would like to get a better grip on that this summer. The only routine that I am starting to get down is a gym routine, which like, thank God for that, because you know, now that I'm not in a restaurant standing on my feet for like 12 hours a day, it's definitely, you know, taken a toll on my body. Like I need to be more active than I was before. And I've never been the kind of person that's had a good gym routine. Like that's just not something I've prioritized, which is bad because I really should. And now I finally feel like I'm starting to get into a gym routine, which is really nice. And that's one of the only regular routines that I am committed to right now in my life. You know, usually in my days, if I have a day where I'm filming, I try to get that done as early in the day as possible. So I'll do that, you know, as soon as I wake up, eat some food, usually by 11 a.m. or at least by noon, I'm filming, especially because the lighting in my room is best during those hours during the day. Otherwise, like if I'm working on like a reading vlog or something, I'll usually start reading right away during the day. Or if I have some editing to do, as soon as I wake up, I start working on editing. A lot of times too, if I film like a sit down video like this, then I usually edit that in the same day just because it's easier for me to remember exactly what I said and like where I need to cut cut out clips if I edit it immediately after. But you know, the day-to-day varies so much with YouTube. Like, I don't really have a set schedule because it's hard to know what it's gonna look like, you know, because at any given time, I'm usually working on some kind of reading vlog, so I'm always vlogging for that. But then, like, as far as sit-down videos go, I don't really have a routine of, like, which days I film or which days I edit. Like, it's all just kind of like, what's the next thing that I'm working on? I kind of work more on projects, like, one at a time instead of having a routine. I guess I don't find it very helpful if I had a routine, because then I would feel like I would have to stick to it. Like, oh shoot, I didn't film today and today's my filming day, and then oh, I have to edit tomorrow even though I don't want to. I kind of just base it more off of what I need to prioritize. So like, say in this last week, I've had 3 videos that I'm working on for this week, and I just kind of plan my week around those videos. But also, if there's a day where I feel like I need to get some filming done but I am not in the mood to film, I won't do it that day. Like, I'll just kind of rearrange my schedule so that I can film when I'm in the mood to film. Because the thing with YouTube is that, like, it comes across, you know, like, your mood comes across in your videos, and I never want to be like in a grouchy mood or like just not in a happy mood when I'm filming. So I guess the long answer to that question is just that I like to kind of base my schedule off of whatever I'm currently working on, and I don't know if I'm ever going to get into a better routine with YouTube, because I don't really know if a routine with YouTube can even exist, because YouTube is such a, you know, random job sometimes. Like, I don't know, I'm just really taking things day by day with this, you know, and I just kind of like look at my monthly planner and I think about what I want to do in each month. I only plan out videos like a few months ahead. Like, for example, I have a few reading vlogs planned for these next couple of months that I would like to get done, but farther than that, I don't really think more advanced than that, and I just kind of take this thing one day at a time, you know? Somebody asked, when you tell people about your job, do they take it seriously? To be honest, I haven't like had the opportunity to tell a stranger like, oh, what do you do for your job? Oh, I do YouTube. You know, like, I haven't really had that exchange happen yet, because to be honest, most of my friends that I have, like almost nearly all of my friends that I have in Washington have come from the restaurant, and so a lot of them already know that I do YouTube full-time and that I've left my job to do YouTube full-time, and they're all super supportive about it, you know? Like, they all kind of like make fun of me, because now whenever I walk in, they'll be like, oh my god, it's the famous Gabby Reads, and you know, like, they give me shit, but like, they're super supportive. But to be honest, like, I don't know if I would tell someone, like, if somebody asked me that I didn't know, that was just like a random stranger, if they were like, oh, what do you do for your job? I'm pretty sure that I would just say, oh, I work in a restaurant, because I don't feel comfortable just like sharing with anybody that I do YouTube. Like, I don't know why. And I do think part of the reason is that I just get really embarrassed by the idea of people that I know in real life like watching me online. I still like can't even fully comprehend that that's what I do for a job. And yeah, I'm embarrassed that somebody would like want to make fun of me, or like, I don't know. You just never know, you know, you never know what people are gonna think when you say that you do YouTube full time, and I don't want somebody looking me up online anyways that I know in real life, and like, that's just a whole embarrassing situation for me. So I would probably just tell them that I work in a restaurant. I also got a lot of questions about like, you know, reading, and like, does it take the fun out of reading when it's something that you have to do as a full-time job, or like, do you read a lot more now that you have so much more free time? And to answer all of those questions, I would say yes, a little bit. I think I'm definitely reading a lot more ever since I left my job, which was good. You know, it's kind of like the point. Like, I wanted to be able to read more and be able to do more content and do all of the things. I'm just reading a lot more than I was before, which is awesome. But I also do think in some ways it can feel a little bit like overwhelming, you know, because I do feel like even though I have more time to read now, it's overwhelming the amount of things that I want to accomplish within 1 month, and I have to keep reminding myself like, okay, how much can I realistically do in 1 week? Like, I really need to give myself a more realistic look, because I'll be planning like 1 reading vlog per week, but then that reading vlog will require me to read like 4 to 5 books potentially in that 1 week, and I'm like, okay, really, can I realistically do that with everything else that I'm taking on? Like, I don't know. And I feel like in some ways it's definitely impacted my love for reading, but mostly in the way that, like, kind of like how I explained it before in a recent Q&A, where I said now I'm getting into that mindset where I'm like, do I even want to read this book if I'm not vlogging it? Now I'm in that mindset where I'm thinking about content and the content that I can create, and that comes before whatever I want to read, you know? So most of the time I do try to put it in a way where I'm like, okay, what do I want to read right now? Like, what am I most eager about reading? And then I'll try to figure out a way to incorporate that into content in some way. Like, for example, example, if I have like a bunch of thrillers that I'm really excited to get to, then I'll be like, okay, next week I'm doing a thriller vlog and I'll just include those thrillers. But then sometimes, like, you know, earlier last month when I had the plan to do like reading Japanese thriller and horror books, and then I had the plan of like Rachel's gonna pick my TBR and like different things like that, then it's kind of like I have a set TBR that I need to get done for that video. And then it's not that it like takes the fun out of reading, but it's also like I have these books that I have to read for this video, so it can feel a little bit more like demanding and a little bit more stressful. But luckily, it usually works out where I find some books that I really enjoy anyways. Most of the time, I'm not doing video concepts that I feel like I'm not going to enjoy the books because, you know, I do want to enjoy my time reading. I feel like that in general is a really interesting conversation that I would love to have, you know, with other creators, kind of talking about like how has your reading life changed since you've been on YouTube. You know, like I feel like that's a really interesting conversation because I can definitely say my reading has changed a lot since I first started on YouTube in 2015. I did get a bunch of questions too that were asking, you know, like, were you scared? Did you have doubts? Aren't you scared there's no safety net in YouTube? What if it falls through? What if it doesn't work out? And like, trust me, yes, I'm scared. Yes, my brain, I have an anxiety brain, okay? My brain is always thinking of worst case scenarios. And so yes, I've thought about this so often. Like, what if I just wake up one day and this isn't, you know, financially stable for me anymore? Or like, what do I do when I don't love it anymore? What do I do when, like, what if I decide this isn't something I want to do anymore? Of course, I think about that all the freaking time. I've thought of it every single day. And I don't know, I feel like I just decided that I have to take this chance, you know, because I'll always be wondering if I could have, if I never did it, you know? And I'd rather live with the fear of like, maybe one day this won't work than the fear of never knowing if I could have. You know? But yeah, I mean, to be honest, that is a huge concern of mine, you know, if one day, like, the views just completely disappear and nobody cares anymore, and it's just, ugh. Now, whenever I hear the song Nothing New by Taylor Swift, it hits me on a whole different level, because I always think, like, will you still want me when I'm nothing new? You know, like, on YouTube, like, in 5 years, like, will people still be watching me in 5 to 10 years? Like, I don't know. You know, I feel like YouTube definitely takes a toll on your confidence as a person, you know, a little bit, because it's like, I saw this on Emma Chamberlain. She just did a podcast episode recently, or somewhat recently, like towards the beginning of this year, that was talking about how it can be so hard to be a creator on the internet when your channel or like your, you know, social media platform is your career, because it's like, all of a sudden, these numbers, maybe the numbers when you're on social media don't matter to you, and that's fine. But once it becomes, you know, your full-time job and you're relying on income from said social media, you have to start to care about the numbers, because that's going to affect, you know, your earnings that month. So it's like, it's hard because you start to associate like your self-worth with the amount of views or the amount of likes that you're getting. And that can be like a really toxic mindset. And I was definitely starting to feel that a little bit at the beginning of this year, where like you start to feel like who you are as a person is reflected in those views. And I don't think that that's like a healthy mindset to have. And luckily I've just kind of like gotten over that real quick. But I definitely think about that all the time. And, you know, I got a lot of questions too that was like, what is it like to be your own boss now? And do you have any, or do you give yourself vacation days, or like what does that look like? Just to kind of tie it back into that podcast that I was listening to from Emma Chamberlain, you know, she was kind of talking about how it is really hard sometimes to work for yourself, because you don't really get any vacation days, or you don't get to like switch off your brain from like work mode, because, you know, at any regular job, usually like with my restaurant job, it's like you clock in, you put in your 12 hours, you clock out, and you go home and you just do your hobbies, and you don't think about your job again for the next, you know, couple of hours. You get your sleep, it's all good. You go to work the next day, and that's just life. But with YouTube, or with like working for yourself full time, it's like I am constantly thinking about like, what is the next thing? What is the next thing? How is that video doing? Do I need to do this? Constantly. Like, I can't shut off my work brain, you know, especially because I'm a Capricorn, you know, I'm kind of a workaholic. Like, I never stop thinking about work. And so honestly, it's been kind of hard to take a day off, you know, like, and even though it's like, yeah, if I just want to lay down in bed all day and read a book, I could do that. But in my head, I'm thinking this could be content that I'm missing out on by reading this book. So then I'll find a way to include it in a reading vlog or something, you know, like I'm always thinking about how I could be making this content, or how I'm making whatever I'm doing content. And so I think it's a really interesting conversation, you know, for anybody that's like a full-time creator. It's like, how do you really take days off when you're, your own boss, you know? Like, I'm definitely more hard on myself than anybody ever could be on me. And I think that that's something I've really struggled with, like, in these last 6 months. Like, I can only think of maybe 1 or 2 days in these last 6 months where I didn't do anything related to YouTube. Like, that's not reading, that's not filming, editing, vlogging, like anything. And that's rare, you know? Like, I don't really take days off from YouTube because my brain is just always like on to the next project. And in a way, you know, it's cool because I am always really excited for like whatever I'm working on next. So in a way, it's like, it's always fun, you know? Most of the time it's always fun. And that's why I don't want it to seem like I'm complaining about this job in any way, because it is really fun. And I'm so grateful that I just get to, you know, work on the next project that I want to work on, and that I'm kind of my own boss and I can make these decisions for myself. But at the same time, it can feel kind of overwhelming when it's like, when do I get to take a break? Because then I feel like, well, you don't deserve a break because your job is literally reading and like filming and editing. Like, how hard can it be? You know, like, I'm just more hard on myself than anyone. And so yeah, it is kind of difficult to find that balance of like, when can I take a day off? And like, do I deserve a day off? So I'm still kind of dealing with that. So I'll come back to you in about a year and see how I'm doing with that. I did get a few questions that I wanted to answer that were related to like, how do you plan your videos? How do you consistently come up with new and entertaining content or things like that? I mean, as I said, I only plan out my videos like a few months in advance. So I only have like reading vlogs planned from now until about August. I usually just have one general plan for the whole month of like, this is a vlog that I want to work on. Like, for example, in the month of January, I knew that I wanted to dedicate at least a week of reading books that are recommended for Capricorns. And I was gonna do like that video idea for like a whole week. And then in the month of March, I knew that I wanted to do the like reading Korean thriller and horror books video for the month of March. And then in May, I knew I wanted to do the reading Japanese thriller and horror, you know, vlog video. So I have had videos like that planned for certain months, and I do have upcoming plans for like these next couple of months through August of like at least one reading vlog that I would like to accomplish in those months. But honestly, like, I don't know, besides that, I don't really plan my content in any certain way. I just kind of have, you know, I have a folder on my phone that is just called booktube schedule, and I just kind of list out a bunch of ideas of like things that I would like to do within those months. A lot of times too, I will plan my content around certain sponsored videos that I'm getting. So for example, in any given month, I will probably have about 3 to 5 sponsored videos that I have to do within that month. So that definitely always gets me thinking, because I'm like, okay, if I'm putting this on a sponsored video, what do I want that video to be? And sometimes sponsors, like not every sponsor, but sometimes a sponsor will have to approve of the video idea before they let me film it. So that's why I'm always thinking of video ideas in advance. That way I have a whole backlist of video options that I could pitch to them. But then also I do have my staple videos that I have on this channel that I try to do regularly. So like those are usually like try a chapter videos, are always really fun for me to do. I've constantly written down notes for like the next thriller recommendations, the next romance recommendations, horror recommendations. I like to do the videos that are like, if you like this, you would like this, whether that's for books or then a book and a movie. But I also do try to pay attention to like what's currently popular, or I do try to focus on content sometimes that like I don't know if my audience would necessarily love watching it, but it might also expose me to more of an audience on YouTube. Like for example, that, you know, video that I did reading books like a Capricorn, you know, it makes sense that like the average viewer of my channel probably wouldn't be interested in watching that. But I got so many comments on that video saying that they discovered my channel through that video. And that was kind of my goal with that. You know, I think sometimes you have to think of ways for people to discover your channel that are like videos that are outside of your normal thing, you know? Like even last month when I posted the book recommendations for songs by BTS, that video completely flopped. It did so bad in views on my channel, which I kind of was expecting because I know a lot of my viewers probably aren't fans of BTS. But then it's also like, you have to think, okay, maybe that video will be how other BTS fans find my channel and things like that. You know, like you have to do videos sometimes that you know probably won't do well for your own audience, but you have to be thinking, maybe this will be the video that somebody finds my channel through this video because it's a very specific thing. I also got a few questions that's, you know, things like, what is it like being self-employed, like paying bills and health insurance and retirement and taxes and all of those things. And to answer your question, I've been paying health insurance by myself out of pocket since I turned 26 because my restaurant job did not offer health insurance, which was also one of the reasons why I felt comfortable quitting, because I've been paying for health insurance myself this entire time. You know, like my previous job at the restaurant didn't really offer any benefits, so that was another reason why I knew that I wouldn't be missing that at least in my life. Like, I've been paying for health insurance myself, and yeah, it sucks because health insurance is expensive when it's by yourself and out of pocket. It's been really hard, honestly, to navigate, figuring out how to set this up as like a professional thing. Like, I've had to start my own LLC. I have to open a bank account that's for my business. I have to put everything that I make from YouTube into an account, and there's just a lot of things that I have to learn. And I would recommend hiring an accountant if you're, not totally sure about things with YouTube and taxes and things like that, which I definitely had to do last year in 2021. I hired an accountant. I also have an amazing friend, Olivia, over from Olivia Reads a Latte, who really helps me a lot with understanding like the business side of YouTube. She's really good with that kind of stuff. And I think honestly, like, that is one of the biggest struggles of YouTube for me so far, is figuring out that side of things, like the business side of things, the taxes, all that gets involved with it. Because I mean, if you didn't know, with YouTube, it's like at the end of the year, everything that you've made in that year gets taxed, because like when you get paid, none of that gets taxed up front. So everything that you're making in the year isn't taxed until the end of the year. And then you have like a whopping amount of taxes that you owe at the end of the year. And it's honestly close to about like 30% of what you make in the year just gets whoosh, taken by taxes. So, but yeah, that whole aspect of things has been the most stressful thing for me about YouTube by far. I actually hate it so much. Ooh, I did get the question, would you be interested in doing a day in my life video? It would be cool to see how you spend your day. And yes, I actually did very recently just film a day in my life video for my Patreon exclusive video for the month of June. So I'll have that link down below. I don't know if it'll be available to see by the time this video goes up, but it's the video that I'm doing for the month of June on my Patreon. So if you would like to see more of like a day in my life, just kind of, laid back style vlog where I kind of walk you through what a typical day in my life looks like, I'll have that linked down below if you want to see that. One of the questions I got that I thought was a really cool question said, do you feel like you could have done YouTube full-time without also having a Patreon? To be honest, when I quit my job in December, I didn't have a Patreon. When I quit my job, I actually started Patreon in January, and at the time I was starting a Patreon because I felt like I had more time to dedicate to what I was offering on Patreon, because I always knew that if I started a Patreon, I wanted to be able to do, like live reading sprints and like movie nights and all of these things that would require a lot of my time. And so, the main reason why I started my Patreon was because I finally felt like I had enough time to do those things that I wanted to do. So I wasn't really expecting for Patreon to be as financially stable as it has been for me in these last 6 months. So I was full on planning to do YouTube full-time without my Patreon. So like, I definitely think that it's possible to do YouTube full-time without a Patreon, because I do think if you have consistent sponsorships, I do think you could make enough money from consistent sponsorships and YouTube AdSense to do that full-time without a Patreon. But I do think Patreon does provide a really nice safety net for me, because Patreon is like the most consistent month to month with how much I'm making. So it's nice to have that extra safety net just in case my AdSense or just in case my sponsorships aren't as, because like sponsorships vary month to month, it really varies how many sponsorships I'm taking on. And so like, because those things vary so much month to month, it is nice to have Patreon, but I don't necessarily think it's something you have to do YouTube full time. I also got a question that I thought was cool. They said, what do you do as a part of your job besides social media content? I feel like when you hear that somebody does YouTube full time, you just assume that all of their time is dedicated to only like YouTube things on social media. But I think that's a really interesting question, because it's like, obviously as a booktuber, I feel like booktubers put a lot more time into their channel than any other YouTube channel, because, not only do we do all of the things like filming and editing and all of that kind of setup, but also, reading plays a huge part in a booktuber's channel. So it's like reading also takes a lot of time. Then I feel like I always have so much on my plate, because I'm not just doing YouTube stuff, I'm also doing like Instagram stuff a lot, like taking Instagram photos, setting up books, setting up the lighting, making little book reels takes a lot longer than you might think. Like, oh my gosh, like my book reels take me a long time. And then there's also like the fact that I have an ASMR channel. I haven't been like as active recently over there, but I do have a second YouTube channel that's an ASMR channel. I have a Film Queens podcast with my sister. If you didn't know, me and my sister started a podcast in March where we talk about movies and things. So a lot of my time is also dedicated to like scripting those episodes, recording those episodes, and editing those episodes as well. And then also, like, as a YouTuber, a lot of my time is dedicated to emails. Like, oh my gosh, there's so many emails. Every time I work with a sponsor, we go back and forth with at least like 10 emails before the video, after the video, during the video. There's a lot of emailing that's involved in YouTube. All right, and then the last question that I wanted to answer for this video, somebody asked, how would you describe your journey and self-confidence from starting out until now? When I started out on YouTube, oh my gosh, I was 20 years old. It was 2015. I was literally the most like awkward human you've ever met in your whole life. I was literally Kath from Fangirl, okay? Like, we all know how awkward Kath is. Like, I related to her more than I've ever related to anything because I was like literally so awkward, didn't know how to talk to people, and I was just like totally in my shell. Not just because of YouTube, because like also becoming a manager in a restaurant also definitely helped me build my confidence, especially with like resolving conflicts and being able to talk to people about issues. Because of the combination of me becoming a restaurant manager and becoming more active on YouTube, it really did help me grow my confidence as a person. And especially, you know, like YouTube is one of those places on the internet where I feel like you really do have to have a lot of confidence in order to survive on YouTube, you know, because YouTube can be very cruel. You know, YouTube is a really scary place sometimes because I feel like it can just take a few comments that are really shitty to ruin your day. And to be honest, like at the beginning of my journey on YouTube, I really let the negative comments get to me, you know, like I really let every negative thing somebody had to say about me, it would get under my skin and I couldn't stop thinking about it. And it just really used to bother me, you know, but now I've been on YouTube so long that it really doesn't faze me for the most part anymore. I mean, of course, every now and then I get, you know, rude comments that are mostly just irritating, but like I don't really let it get to me the way that I used to. And so I definitely think my confidence has improved a lot because of YouTube. All right, well, those are all of the questions that I'm going to answer for today. You guys came through with so many amazing questions. Like, I literally had to narrow down all the ones that I wanted to answer because there were so many great questions. So thank you so much to everybody who sent in a question or cares enough to watch in the first place. I appreciate you so freaking much. You have no idea. Thank you so much for being here. Yeah, I hope, you know, this video gave you a little bit of insight as to like, you know, what it's been like so far. I've had a really great, you know, last 6 months, and I feel like now that these last 6 months are over, I feel like now I'm truly starting to figure out how this lifestyle looks for me. Your support means more to me than you could ever know, so thank you so freaking much. And yeah, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and thank you for watching, and I'll see you very soon with another one. Bye.